Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Daily Factor. My name is Faraz Patel. I'll be in your company for just less than an hour. Well, let's get things going, and we start off with our COVID-19 stats. And South Africa has recorded an increase of 8,881 new cases in the last 24 hours. That is a record for the current third wave. Now, the National Institute of Communicable Diseases have confirmed that the country's cumulative COVID-19 cases has increased by 1,712,939. The death toll, unfortunately, has increased by 129 to 57,310. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has lifted the threshold for companies to produce their own electricity without a license to 100 megawatts in a surprise announcement that will be much celebrated by business. Now, let's take a listen to what the President had to say earlier on.
In further reforming our electricity sector towards achieving a stable and secure supply of energy. Following an extensive public consultation process and discussions within our own ranks in government and discussions between the Minister of Minerals, Energy and myself, and also a significant amount of technical work undertaken by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, we will be amending Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act to increase the NERSA licensing threshold for embedded generation projects from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatts. This intervention reflects our determination to take the necessary action to achieve energy security and to reduce the impact of load shedding on businesses and households across the country. It is evident, there is evidence of our intention that we are putting forward today to tackle this economic crisis head on by implementing major economic reforms that will transform our economy moving forward. It also demonstrates our commitment as government to listen carefully to experts, to engage closely with our social partners, and to take on board new ideas to address our long-standing challenges. This measure will be crucial in developing a response to the energy crisis that is ambitious enough, bold enough, and urgent enough.
Now, listening on this, I have Ted BLOM. He's an energy expert and advisor. Ted, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Factor.
Hi, good afternoon.
Ted, I just want to get your take on what the President said. Is this a knee-jerk reaction, or was this something the government had planned, but they'd waited for a crisis that we are having right now in terms of stage 4 load shedding to go ahead and implement this?
I think this is a crisis, and I think somebody's laid down the gauntlet. And this is a knee-jerk reaction by the government. And it's certainly very welcome, because I think we're at the cusp now where people are saying that if you don't sort out and alleviate the problem one way or the other, we're going to close shop and disinvest and disappear.
And I think that's important, Ted, because investment now has become a big drive for South African businesses. And it just seems as if we have this continuous blackouts, surely, as you say, investors will look at this and say, there is absolutely no way we want to put our investment in South Africa, especially in a pandemic world that we are living in.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've been getting inquiries for the last 2-3 years, and I've had to reluctantly tell the people that this is not the place to invest. Firstly, there's two problems. One is the availability and unreliability of power, and secondly, the cost. The cost has gone through the roof, and it's certainly no longer competitive compared to what it was 12 years ago. So I think that for those guys who got the ability to do their own thing, and this is really just the mid-market. The large users are not being given relief under this concession. Large users use more than 1,000 megawatts of power. So this is really the mid-market. So it's bakeries, heavy industry, maybe automobile manufacturers with their paint shops and so on. And it's very welcome relief, because this is where the bulk of the jobs lie.
Ted, what's interesting, okay, when obviously Eskom's media team had released their statement yesterday, and you know, and I quote, they said, due to delays in returning generating units. But I mean, what's interesting is that we are using, and we say we as South Africans, are relying on energy that is coming from coal and diesel. And I'm just trying to understand that surely now these are two sort of natural resources that can be looked at as something that is quite extinct, especially in the modern day use of energy and electricity.
Yes and no. The bottom line is there's a lot of noise about renewables. But just if you can go back to global statistics, worldwide, renewables supply less than 3% of the daily power that the countries use around the globe. Yes, they're growing very fast, but off a very small base. And really, it's not industrial type power. You know, if you're in Europe and you're in a first world economy and you've got laptops and that's your economy, you can live off renewables because you can afford to buy a couple of batteries to keep you going. But if you're talking about mining, smelting, and etc., heavy usage, I mean, they did a survey in the UK. If the UK had to rely only on renewables, there wouldn't be enough land surface. They'd have to put half of the stuff in the sea because renewables don't provide energy-intensive type of power. So, yeah, and that's the same for South Africa, is that, yes, there's a lot of noise about renewables. There's a lot of push about renewables. But the fact of the matter is renewables cannot give you more than 4 hours at max power per day in a 24-hour cycle. So you need to have 20 hours of backup power times a couple of days if it's cloudy for a week like we're having at the moment with the rain. And that's exorbitantly expensive, and nowhere around the globe is there any utility that relies only on renewables to supply power. It's not possible to run an economy only on renewables. So I think that whilst everybody will try and be responsible in how they deploy their generation assets, the fact of the matter is that they're going to have to rely on either gas, diesel, coal, or nuclear. Those are the options that are dispatchable power. The other stuff is not dispatchable. You can't switch on the globe and look around and see whether the power is going to come on or not. You need to know that when you switch the switch, the power is on.
Yeah, and Ted, you know, you're mentioning nuclear. I know this has been something that the South African government had discussed, obviously, during the Jacob Zuma era. I mean, the pros and cons of nuclear. I mean, from an expert advice, I mean, how close are South Africa to being pushed into that scenario if these load sheddings? We heard Andre de Ruyter, the Eskom CEO, saying that load shedding is going to be with us for the next 5 years. Surely as a business owner, surely as a homeowner, surely as a citizen of South Africa, you don't want to be sitting stuck with 5 years with this load shedding problem. So just your take on regard to the nuclear part. How close are we to that happening? Or are we still going to be stuck on the resources that we're currently using now to give us that power?
Okay, so the nuclear scenario has changed dramatically over the last 5 years. I think when you mention nuclear, you're still talking about legacy type installations, 2,000 megawatts and 4,000 megawatts, and Zuma tried to do 9,000 megawatts, and everybody's forgotten about Mbeki's nuclear aspirations of 2008. No, the technology has changed radically in the last 5 years. You now get small-scale embedded nuclear. It's anything from 20 megawatts to 200 megawatts. It's a low pressure. So they can't explode. It has air cooling, so you don't need to be next to the water, to the sea, the ocean, or whatever. And it only needs to be refueled once in 12 years. So it's low maintenance and readily available and very, very cheap. We're talking about below 6 US cents a kilowatt hour. And that's a lifetime cost. So there's no escalations like with coal. Every year you have coal increases and etc. Pressure on coal costs, etc. With nuclear, once you've bought the fuel, you'll have a projectable price for 12 years. It's very, very reliable, 24/7 stuff. And also what's really exciting about this is that provided you can sort out the EIA side of it, you can have a nuclear plant, a mini nuclear plant running within 24 months.
Ted BLOM, energy expert and advisor, we thank you so much for making the time for us here on The Daily Factor.
You're welcome.
Well, there we go. Well, the question is now, of course, how long are South Africans going to have the patience for load shedding. As I speak, various houses across the country, various households that are just sitting there experiencing load shedding, and of course stage 4, which is set to go through to Sunday evening. I tell you what, it is that frustrating. So the government needs to act. Well, what President Cyril Ramaphosa has done for businesses, of course, increase it to 100 megawatts of power. But that can only be the start. More needs to be done from government. Well, coming up after the break, we'll be shifting our attention to the world updates and, of course, the Muslim family that was murdered in Toronto, Canada. Stay tuned.